Let's have it.
Well, welcome everybody. It's Saturday morning here in the late part of February, and I'm Rauel LaBrush. That's Rauel like Rauel, LaBrush like Fresh. Get it right, because I have people regularly when I say my name is Rauel, and they go, oh, like Raul. And I'm like, did you listen to what I just said? It's Rauel like Growl. Now, get it right, or I will bite your ear. You know, I would never bite anyone's ear. Well, maybe my wife's. But anyways, and you are, sir.
Antowan Hallman Sr.
And do you bite ears by chance? I'm just wondering.
Say that one more time.
Do you bite ears by chance? Is that...
No, we don't bite ears, man. No, don't bite ears. Well, actually, God's word will bite an ear. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah, just like, are you listening to me? Here comes the 2x4. Boom. So, yeah. I'll bite your ear with this 2x smack in the side of the head. But anyways, well, and this is, if you don't know already, this is Frame of Reference coming together. My good friend Antowan and I started this. Gosh, we're coming up on 2 years, I think now. Which
yeah, no, man.
Phenomenal. When you think about how time flies when you're having a good time. And we're all about just, like I keep telling people, maybe it sounds trite or stupid, but, you know, I'm just kind of a regular old white guy coming up on 65. And I don't know if you're regular or not. I don't know if it's fair to say about you, Antoine. Your life is like anything but regular, I think. But, you know, you're not like some fancy dancy whatever. You're just Antoine, right?
Yeah, just a regular dude, man, that loves God and love people. And, of course, you know, when we talk about, you know, moving to meet the needs of people, people are going to people. So that means it's comical, it's just funny, man. But at the same time, you know, I love what we do as a ministry, and just, again, loving God, loving people, man, and just learning from the lessons that we encounter, you know, because that's at the end of the day, that's what history and understanding is all about. Learning from mistakes, being able to share testimonies, being able to change the trajectory of people's lives, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And I started watching this documentary, and I got to finish it up, but it's called The Mind of a Dog. And I thought, well, you know, I've got dogs. I love dogs. I've had dogs for a long, long time. So I just want to kind of see what this is all about. And started watching it. And one of the points the guy made that I thought was so fascinating is that part of what makes dogs so successful as a species is that because they figured out that if they help us, we help them. And so there's been like one of the things they pointed to was, in fact, pointing that you can take 2 cups and put food or a treat under one of the cups, move them around like the shell game, and then point to the one that the treat is under, and the dog will go to that cup. Where it's like even monkeys don't get the whole pointing thing that you're trying to help them. They just kind of do whatever. But a dog actually has figured out that we're helping them because they help us. And that symbiotic thing going on is why we're both so successful and why we're so connected to one another. And I thought, you know what? That's what people need to do. Learn that helping one another is so much more powerful in terms of the success and the furtherance and development of a species, you know, or a group, than it will ever be to attack and denigrate and, you know, just try to decimate someone that opposes you in any way. I mean, and especially when you're like looking for opposition. I mean, I feel like we're a culture, a nation right now of like looking to pick a fight. For God's sakes, we're going to put a 25% tariff on Canada. I mean, that's like putting a 25% tariff on golden retrievers, for God's sakes. You know, Canada and NS have been so, you know, loyal and intimate and, you know, connected to one another and, you know, mutually successful. And then, you know, to use that as a bargaining, yeah, give it to those Canucks. Like, what? What is going on here? So
it's funny, man. You know, of course, you know, one of my talking points in this love message is like, can we as human beings learn, at least try to love another human being as much as you love your favorite animal? And of course, but people pick and choose what they choose to give to, what they choose to love, what they choose to even bother understanding. You know, a lot of us and a lot of people are sucked up into their own little news bubble, or even their own narrative that they're trying to create. And of course, when we talk about narrative creation, of course, like saying sticking it to Canada, for instance, man, a lot of our resources come from Canada. Aluminum and some irons and steels and things like that come from them. And so it's like, why would you, like you say, bite the hand that's trying to help you? Right. But at the same time, it's like, again, it's just, we talk about, like saying we're in Black History Month, right? Right. We talk about, of course, and we ain't just trying to celebrate, the struggle and the pain, but we also celebrate the brilliance and creativity and innovation of Black people. And it's like we tend to, like that, those things that Black people have done, they tend to be marginalized. But what we're starting to see now, it's almost like this attempt at changing the narrative and going into this self-marginalization. Trying to say, oh, we're going to be the smaller people. The way of Americans as we know it is going away, this, that, and the other. Right. And they're creating these narratives that try to almost marginalize themselves. And we see, but you see this narrative that's being flashed out and being created, like we were talking before we came live, man, about how, the young white male is kind of got grabbed by the neck into a lot of things that they may not yet fully understand, or it's just a narrative that's being created and instilled in their young minds that, equity, justice, these things are not important, or that they are a supreme or superior being to people of other color, of other nationalities and races. Yeah. And this is where we have to just remind people, man, that we are all in this thing together. And of course, America is creating this thing, and it's sad. We see like the closing of the border, or the attempted closing of the border, deportation as an example. Yeah. Of course, and this is what I was saying a second ago, where we have to come out of our own news bubbles to understand get the full context, the full picture. Because just as they are, like say, as this administration is trying to deport Latin Americans, right? Mm-hmm. Latino Americans. This is what they've done. They've actually, are you familiar with what they are doing with white South Africans? No. They're saying that white South Africans are being persecuted, threatened. And so they're giving these people amnesty. They're giving these people refugee status. These are Elon Musk people, right? and it's funny how it's like, we going to close the border except for this group of people. So basically they're inviting white South Africans to come to the country, but at the same time excluding other races. And if we don't come out of our own little news bubbles to grasp the full context of what's going on, we could easily be persuaded one way or another. Of course, again, like, just like, how we say like, racism, and then there's the reverse racism, right? Right. And how, and if we're not careful, we don't get the full context, the full picture, we'll be operating under a false narrative, and we'll lose years of our life hating other people, walking around and missing disinformation. And this is we really need to get people to understand the gravity of this current time, man. People need to really understand the importance of this time. I know, like, we're in February, we're in Black History Month, man. People just need to understand that it's more than just a calendar observance, so to speak, but it's a celebration of resilience, innovation, and the endurance spirit of a people, man. Yeah. That has often been marginalized. So. Yeah. Man, it just we come out of our bubbles and get the full picture. That'll be the beginning of beginning of the understanding, man. Yeah, there's so much of this that so polarizing when it doesn't need to be polarizing, I guess. We were talking a little bit before we went on here that Black History Month, I know, like in circles that I'm in, some of the working class white guys I work with, I've heard comments like, why do we have to have a Black History Month? Why do we have to have women's blah, blah, blah? When's going to be the white man's history, or, White History Month? And it's so
just ignorant, I guess, and so biased against recognizing that, dude, like every month is White History Month, you know? I mean, we just, regularly celebrate, look at what us white people did, and we don't think about, how that happened. It's almost like we're a nation of salesmen. Salesmen in most companies bring in most of the revenue that a company has, and there may be all other kinds of support, agencies or support group people, the accounting folks or the IT folks or whatever that are supporting them. But the sales guys are bringing in the money, so they have this, thing of like, well, we bring in all the money. And I just want to kind of step back and say, well, but that's your job, that's what you're supposed to do. So that kind of simple recognition about this isn't something special. It's what you do. It's what you're good at. And we as white people want to constantly think that we're special in some way. And that when someone else, a person of color, wants to celebrate or have an opportunity to teach and, just reflect on the people within their nature, their race, which I honestly don't even like the word race anymore, because it's like, if we're all the human race and we got to figure out a way to celebrate diversity without being threatened by it, to celebrate the inclusion of anybody and everybody who wants to be included instead of being threatened by it. So all of this attack on, DEI, which is more than just people of color, folks. DEI was set up to help the disabled. DEI was set up to be inclusive for women. DEI was set up to be inclusive for all sorts of people that had been marginalized and will now again be marginalized and not have equal footing with white guys. And, all this nonsense about, white guys aren't getting jobs because, they're just choosing these other people because, they're black. Or they're, because they're, deficient in some way. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You're saying stupid stuff without even understanding how the hiring process works. What it's really about is, if there are two people of equal opportunity or equal ability, skill level, or even, a better skill level, that the person that has that better skill level is going to have the opportunity for the job. You shouldn't have to say, well, you're going to get this job because you're white, nor should you be saying you're going to get this job because you're black or you're a woman or you're gay. That's not the point. The point is to have everybody on an equal playing field so that it doesn't matter whether you're black or you're gay or whatever. You're just going to be the best person for the job. And the reality is we got to face up to the folk that as white folks in America, we have had the advantage for way, way too long. We have gotten jobs because we're white. And if you don't believe that, if you don't understand that, open up some history books and look at the 40s and the 50s in this country, because that's recent enough to say, that was my mom and my dad or something, right? It's such a weird thing that, a while back, I learned about some black history. I'm by far not an expert in it, but just realizing the African continent and the culture that was there, that black people were just stolen from, that were just kidnapped from. And can you imagine, anybody out there that's white, can you imagine being out at the grocery store or the mall or whatever, and then all of a sudden somebody just shows up and just takes you? Because you look like you're a strong, strapping young lad or whatever. We're going to take you because we need help at our whatever. And they take you, thousands of miles away in a vessel that you can't possibly even imagine having access to. And they just put you to work. And now you're here. This is it. Think about it, that in terms of what that was. And then these weren't just people that were sitting around in, I don't know, some hovel somewhere, or, just, doing nothing but, sitting around and picking their nails and whatever. These were people with a rich, vibrant culture. These were people with families, had kids that they probably never saw again. These were people that were, living lives that were meaningful. And we just pulled it off. Now, we don't have to just focus on that, but then in spite of that history, look at what black people have accomplished in this country. Look at the sports figures that you idolize. Look at the entertainers that you idolize. Look at the people that in general are really seriously successful, brilliant people. Watch Hidden Figures if you want to know the incredible intelligence of, some of these people that were they intelligent because they were black? No, but they were intelligent and did significant things, and they were black. Okay, that's not, we're not. That's part of the problem. We, as white people, we try to say, well, we're really good because we're white. I mean, white is somehow better than black. No, no, it's not. It's not. It's just not. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm on the soapbox. I can't.
Oh no. It's all good, brother. It's just like, and you made some great points, man. Because we really have to confront the attempt of changing the narrative of the country, man. Of course, when we talk about Black history, what Blacks have done in the shaping of America, man, that the accomplishments and achievements of Black people are trying to be minimalized, man. They're being minimalized. That way you can kind of almost like you minimalize the history. And then, of course, you say, oh, slavery, people, they wanted to be enslaved. No, we didn't. Then right. It's like,
right.
All these different things that have
so
happened.
Much better off as slaves. There's so much better off.
And of course, it's not, when we talk about Black history and those things, it ain't just about, celebrating the painful struggle and all those things. But yes, it's about celebrating the brilliance, man, the contributions of Black America Black Americans, in arts, politics, man, science, all these different things. There are so many things that Black people have done to actually, shape the American culture that people want to erase, man. They simply want to erase. And of course, but we got to understand, and we have to fight and know that, of course, we have to call these things out so that there's an understanding of our past. We have to understand our past better to live a life that's going to be more equitable, that's going to have more justice, that's going to have more empowerment. We have to continue to educate, and just make people aware that, hey, this is not a one-sided thing, but it's a both sides. Of course, America's wealth was built on the free labor of Black people. But again, people want to erase that. They want to take it out of the textbooks. They want to take it out of all the popular narratives, and of course, it's just, we have to fight to maintain a history. So and then, it's to see how the reverse happens, just like when we simply try to point out the achievements and innovations of and just basically the pain and struggles of what Black people have done and everything that has happened in the course of this country. It's like, when we point these things out, it's like, oh, you're trying to guilt trip us. And it's like, no, we're not trying to guilt trip you. It's simply that, hey, we are trying to just, let's get the facts straight on why the systemic and systematic things that are happening in all the various institutions, as far as education, medical, criminal justice, economic, why these things happen. And let's talk about the unfair advantage that has been given. But now let's talk about how can we make things more equitable. Of course, remember, we were talking about this before. What you do, you minimize the history of a people, you marginalize them, you create laws against them, and then you agitate them into breaking that law so you can throw them in jail. Just like when slavery was abolished, right? Right. Of course, what they do, they created some laws. Hey, you got caught jaywalking, you ended up on a chain gang for 10 years. Right. If they thought you were looking at a white woman, you got thrown in jail for X amount of years. So it's just like all these systemic and systematic things that have continuously happened over the course of this history. We point them out, and then you get guilt tripped, or they want to say it's reverse racism because you're pointing these things out. Right. And again, and it's not about guilting anyone into anything. It's just acknowledging the fact that Black people, brown people, all people of color have contributed to the economic growth of this country, but the economic gains have not been equally dispersed, so to speak. And so it's like when we point these things out, we talk about, a lot of inventions that Black people have created, They'll never get recognition for them because they just happen to be the assistant in the lab that put the thing in place to make the light bulb work. Or, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's so many little things like that that's going to go unrecognized. But even the people that have that trailblazed a way and made a way, like the Frederick Douglasses and Sojourner Truths and things like that, talked about the abolition of slavery and all those different things and stood up for women's rights. A lot of these things that Black people fight for, it ain't even just for Black people. It's for everybody. The Civil Rights Act, it included women, and right. That's not just right. Black women, but all women. And, and again, it's like we could never just fight for ourselves. We had to, it always has to be a collective in order to get a small piece of what you've earned.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to just really give clarity and understanding, education. That way these false narratives are crushed.
You talked about, you're trying to make us feel guilty. And that I know that is a prevalent thing. We would rather not, as white folk, it is an inconvenient truth to have to face what white people have done. What I had to do, and you check me on this, brother, if I'm wrong. What I had to do was to get past that of feeling like people were trying to make me feel guilty, and think about how horrible this is that people can do this to people. And that, to me, that was kind of like the key to open up the whole door of compassion and just profound sorrow over what, that old thing, man's inhumanity to man, right? And one of the stories that just kicked me in the head and made me recognize the depths of the evil, I translate it to, there's a scripture in Jeremiah 17:8. It says, the heart, not black hearts, white hearts, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Desperately wicked. When I think of desperately wicked, it's like, our heart is so wicked that it's like hanging on to the edge of a cliff by its fingernails, going, no, I'm not going to give in, no! Or, like Daffy Duck with all the, gold and whatnot. Mine, get away! But then one of the things I ran across when I went through Black History Month, the Justified Anger classes here in Madison, was the story of Emmett Till. And if you guys don't know, anyone listening don't know about Emmett Till, look it up, because it is an incredible story of what life has been like for Black people in our country up until very recent time. And just a real quick synopsis, Emmett Till was a 14-year-old kid. He was abducted. He had been, I believe, in Chicago and went down visiting some family or whatnot in Mississippi in 1955. He was accused of offending a white woman, Carolyn Bryant, in her family's grocery store. As I remember, he was accused of whistling at her. Okay, and it was, she told this story to other people, and later on in life, it actually came out that really hadn't happened. But anyways, she accused that, and he was kidnapped. He was hung. He was, I believe, set on fire. They're just horrible mutilation of this kid who had done nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong, except be in Mississippi that day and that time was essentially what killed him, if you will, and then just the nature of human beings. But the most remarkable thing about that in my brain was when they finally found him, he was so badly decomposed. There are pictures of him in his casket, that, it's barely recognizable as a human being. He had been so horribly disfigured by all the things that they did to not just kill the kid, but to decimate him. And his mother made the decision that she wanted his funeral to be an open casket because she wanted people to see clearly what had happened, what had been done to her son. And I was already like mind blown by the profundity of the hatred and cruelty and wickedness of that act. And not forget the fact that it was white guys, okay? Those were people that did this to a young man who they had no evidence really besides some woman that maybe she had a bad day or she doesn't like the look of them or she doesn't like black kids or something. So she makes a statement and triggers a fire immediately that resulted in that. Not only is that an incredible testimony to the wickedness of people, okay? Forget about the white, black thing. People. A bunch of guys did that to another person, okay? But then the mom, a loving mom, a mom who's raised that kid since a little baby, makes a decision that her poor, precious little kid who was 14 and had his whole life ahead of him, instead of wanting to just remember him as he was or, try to celebrate what he was and, what a sweet kid he was. Because all, tales of him, all stories of him where he's a really nice kid. But she chose to have everyone see him as what he had become as a result of all that hate. He was like a beacon. This is hate. This is anger. This is what we are, what we have become. And that was profoundly important in kind of one of the festering things to get the civil rights movement going was we had to, enough of us, white folk, got woke. Oh, yeah, there's another, let's get people really going with words that they hate right now. That got enough of us going to realize that, oh my God, oh my Lord, how could anyone do that to anyone? How I can't even look. I mean, most people, you see the lines of people coming through that funeral and looking at, and, women are just like breaking down, and just like sobbing. And, a lot of them are just, they like take one glance and they have to look away because it was so awful. And, a lot of the men are walking by and looking and just like thinking about their own stuff that's going on in their lives. And, what's it going to take, Lord? If that was a white kid, I shudder to think, they would have been arming up with every rifle and gun and just marching on down to every white person indiscriminately, just shooting them, I mean, why, that's the kind of anger, right? And I sometimes think, honestly, that that's part of this whole equation is that white people don't want Black history to happen because they want to just keep it down. And I think they're really afraid ultimately that Black folks are going to one day wake up and really it's going to be like the Black Panthers on steroids, and they're just going to have to, you better run for the hills because they're just taking you. They're not going to ask any questions whatsoever. If you're white, you're dead. And I have a hard time saying, don't do it. Don't do it, Antowan. Please don't do that. I'm a poor white guy, but it's totally understandable because look at what we do to each other. So do we want to go there, folks? America, world, do we want to go there and continue that madness? Or do we want to do something, make some inches forward in the process that DEI gave us a chance to do? No, we're now taking LGBTQ has just been shortened now to LGB. So any government site that has anything to do with government agencies and employment, they can have LGB, but TQ plus have to all go away now. Those have just been taken off because they're, too many letters. So what are we doing with Blacks? We're now saying that you can't celebrate Black History Month. If you're in any kind of government or military agency, we can't have any of those celebrations that celebrate groups of people based on color, whatever. And I don't know. It's like if we would just stop all this nonsense and say, look at what people do to people. Is this okay? Is this okay? Is this who we want to be? Or do we believe, are we willing to put our money where our mouth is, put our noses to the grindstone and say, no, we must be better. Because otherwise you might as well just push the button now, folks. NATO, give in, just launch the missiles and your submarines, get them going. Let's just take it all out. And, The next war can be fought after that one with sticks and stones and, whatever. Maybe we'll have a chance of getting it right next time. Or maybe we'll just wipe out human civilization. And if this is all we can be, that's not such a bad thing, because I'm ready to come, Lord. I'm ready for the great beyond, because we can't learn if we're not willing to learn. Man.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good, brother. I love it, man. And when you were talking about the story of Emmett Till, of course, people, and again, those are the very stories that, some people don't want told, because let's just be, 100 with it. That thing had been going on long before Emmett Till. It just took a black woman from Chicago that wanted justice for her child. Just think about the people that were living in that area. How many times has it happened? You think about, like, say, Billie Holiday's song, Strange Fruit. They were like, oh, you can't play this. You can't, talk about black people hanging from trees. You walk down a road and all, that's all you drive down a road and that's all you saw was black people hanging from trees. She couldn't sing about that. And it's just like those things are like they're trying to be minimalized and whitewashed. And again, it's like, when we talk about, the prejudices of that time, again, those things, the brutal reality of slavery, the brutal reality of the suppression of people's voices, the oppression of black people as a whole, they don't want that narrative told. And, of course, like we got all these, we have to, yes, there's racism in all the educational structures, healthcare, criminal justice, economic structure, but the cultural part of things, that's why they continuously some white people, they continuously try to distort history, and that way they can continually perpetuate the reason for their, they say, oh, they're not equal to us because they don't learn as much. They don't do this as well, not knowing, when you take the whole thing in a whole historical context, that black people weren't allowed to learn how to read to a certain point. People had to sneak to learn how to read, and it's like those kinds of things. Like, of course, they say, oh, our brains don't operate the same as a white male brain. And, we see this stuff when the wildfires and things like that was breaking off. There was like, it takes a white male. If you want something done right, it takes a white male to do it. And then again, it's just those things that they're implanting in the young white male mind, just perpetuating the white supremacy, man. But we got to kill it at its roots, at the institutional roots, at the cultural roots. And just again, because when you minimize the achievements and accomplishments of black people, you can just continuously try to rationalize the discrimination that's currently taking place. Of course, and this thing has been going on since long before Emmett Till. But again, they call people woke because, like say a young white male, young white female says, you know what, I want to learn history. I want to get a better understanding of how things work. Of course, like say, me being a black male talking to you as a older white male, when you and I have conversation, I love when you say, you know what, I'm gonna go check that out. I'm gonna go look that up. And that's what that is what's happening right now. Like say these young black men and women, or like in our age range or whatever, are talking to young white men and women saying, hey, this is what has happened. Go look this stuff up for yourself. And so now the young white male and young white female are saying, you know what? Wow, this was wrong. So you mean to tell me that my my great grandpop was actually a part of this, or right, whatever the case may be. And the thing is, and again, it's not to guilt, it's to bring to light. And then that way, when we bring the thing to light, because it ain't about guilting, it's not about, all these, it's just, hey, we need to bring those things to the forefront so there's a better understanding of how we came to this inequitable situation. And now it's like, okay, now that we acknowledge that there was a redlining and housing discrimination, racial discrimination, voter suppression, all these different kind of things that were taking place over the course of history. Now, okay, now that we understand these things, how can we change them? But now as the young white female, young white male starts to stand up and come into a place of allyship, they want to actually guilt them into saying, what's wrong with you? Why are you sticking with those folks? It's like, I'll give you an example. We as a ministry, a young white lady, probably in her mid-20s, a couple years ago, came to my wife and I. She was like, hey, we love how y'all preach. We love that y'all teach the word of God, in its simplicity, but in its wholeness. And she was like, but unfortunately, I can't come to y'all church because my granddad will cut me off.
Yeah.
And but do you see that's the noose around the young white person's neck? Is like, hey, I don't want to lose my inheritance. If I say granddad is wrong in his way of thinking, I'll get cut off. And that is keeping people under the thumb, keeping history under the thumb, keeping those, I'll use the word woke. We want to keep woke people under the thumb, but also you keep black people as a whole under the thumb by just, again, continuously the minimalization and just the exclusion and all these different things of black culture, or even the contribution to what black people have done to American society as a whole. You minimize it, and then you say, hey, there's no reason for them. And that's why we see this erasure campaign coming forth. So, it's just really just bringing things to light. That's what Black History Month is all about, man. It's not necessarily about just, talking about the pain and the struggle, man, but it's also about celebrating the brilliance, the creativity, the innovation, and celebrating what has been done by black people in science, education, politics, all these different things, just trying to crush the narratives of what has been going on over the centuries, man. We have to go back to, like, when we talk about Black History Month, we got to go back to the origin of it. Carter Woodson, in the 1920s and 30s, he was like, hey, we need to dedicate time to the study of the rich and often suppressed history of African Americans. So it started out as Negro History Week.
Yeah.
And then, but it was expanded to a month-long celebration, man, reclaiming history, man, and it was just a way to counteract centuries of exclusion and just kind of the reformation that Black Americans we're not just in the side view of things, but we have been mainstream since then. I mean, far as, again, the building of wealth by the free labor on our backs to even accomplishments in science and medicine and all these different things. And so it's just, again, a lot of people want to wipe the history out. They want to wipe history clean. And then, of course, now, when you and I talk, I'll just say it out loud. It's like this pastor, his name is John Bevere. He made a historic teaching called The Bait of Satan. And, of course, basically in one of his teachings and one of the lessons, he says the church is under attack by the church. And so we see that present day, because now you got, faith deconstruction. People are literally walking away from faith because they're saying, hey, they'd rather follow this president, because they know that you can't say you love God and hate people. So they'd rather just say, I walk away from God so I can justify my hate. But also he was saying how, the church is under attack by other, by the church. And now we got this other group. I don't know if you heard of it, but if you get a chance, read up on these people, man. They are it's called the New Apostolic Reformation, NAR. And these people, they are saying they want to bring about God's judgment by going against his very word. They want to do things to actually perpetuate the Bible coming into it's like these suppressive and oppressive tactics, things that the Bible says goes against the knowledge of God. He says righteousness and justice is the foundation of my throne, right? So they want to create injustices. They want to do things that tip the scales. What God say? Unbalanced scales are an abomination to me. So it's just all these different things that are happening by church people. And there's so many prominent pastors in this country that are actually supporting this. And then they it's like you try to, I don't support what he does, but I love his policy. And it's like, are you actually reading this policy? I think you need to come out of your news bubble and see exactly what he's doing. Because like right now he has with this, with the U.S. aid, with that being stripped away, I don't think they understand the importance of what they're doing, but understanding that, hey, they shot off the farmers in this country. They're now looking, if you go on some social media platforms, you have these young white farmers, with GoFundMe's, and they won't mention the fact they know where this thing came from, but they won't speak against it. Again, it's like, remember how we were saying people would rather just suffer in silence and die rather than say they were wrong. And that's where we are right now. It's like a person refuses to say, hey, I was wrong about my way of thinking. I was wrong in my vote. I was wrong in my perception. I was wrong in my speech. I was wrong in my behavior. But now I want to fix that. But it's like the pride of people. And then, of course, the pressure of other people within their group saying like, no, you are white, you are strong, you have privilege, you have this, you have that. And it's like with these young white people, they're saying, I don't see it that way, but they're getting guilted or threatened into certain ways to actually fall in line. And some will fall in line. Some will actually continue on with their allyship. But, at the end of the day, it's like we have to include in the history. It has to be put front and center. We have to, in front and center, we have to include the narratives. We have the right narratives of all the accomplishments and the innovation and all these different things, the creativity, the perseverance. And that way we can gain a complete picture of how society has been formed. And when we can get to that point where we say, you know what, I'm going to step out of myself. I'm going to look at another human being through the eyes of God, or I'm going to try to see things from their point of view, or I'm going to put myself in their shoes. And when we get more and more people doing that thing, we understand the historical roots of, systematic and systemic and systematic racism and oppression. And it allows us to engage more thoroughly in, contemplating solutions, and that's where we are, man. We have to really just, get to a point where we just say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. Because even with you and I, it's like, I'll say, hey, my perception was wrong. I was off. I was wrong. But you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's where we got to get to the point of being, and when we continuously open the doors like this podcast, I strongly believe that, those walls will come down. Of course, a lot of people are saying that, well, actually, this is what I see with my own eyes. This is my point of view, Antowan Hallman Sr.'s point of view. Rather than give people equal rights, you'd rather burn this whole thing down. This United States of America experiment, the democratic, experiment, they'd rather burn it down than give people what is due.
Well, look at what was said to Benjamin Franklin after the Constitution had been ratified, I believe. So early 1800s, came out after the vote was had and was asked on the street, so are we a monarchy or a republic? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. So there's a quote, all the time we've been talking about history, and there's a quote that gets kind of misquoted quite a bit, but it comes from a 1905 book published by a man called George Setanyana. It's Spanish. I'm sorry, I don't know. But the book is called The Life of Reason, or The Phases of Human Progress. And the 12th chapter of that book, there's a chapter named The Flux and Constancy in Human Nature. So, and in that, there is this phrase: those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Those that cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Think about that for us, because we have different paraphrases of that, and people think it's, Edmund Burke. Sometimes people say it's Winston Churchill. But George Santayana from 1905 came up with that idea, and that's exactly what is happening right now when we try to, just deny the fact that there's, even a need for Black History Month, when we're pulling the Constitution from the whitehouse.gov website, and who knows where else it'll get pulled from, but the more that we, indoctrinate people and get them to just forget about that stuff, that's not important. What's important is now. The minute you do that, the minute you start to make the past and the horrors and the wonders of the past something that you cannot remember, you're condemned to repeating it. And
what does the Bible say? I believe it's Ecclesiastes 1:9. What was done will be done again.
Yeah.
And there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess those of you that are listening, those of you that are watching this, there's not a whole lot of us. I look at the numbers and, we've got a couple thousand, downloads since the beginning of this whole thing, which is great. There's downloads from all over the country. And, I was looking the other day and, there's Germany and the Philippines and, Asia. There are folks all over the world, which is great because, all it ultimately takes is a small group of people to kind of catch the fire and, God can use the movement. But I just ask you to think about remember the history that is celebrated. Remember it with all of us. Remember the history that's celebrated in Black History Month because it's rich, it's vibrant, and it's a story of human survival, of humans overcoming incredible resistance and incredible hardships, and yet still validating the right to be human beings and to be included in the schema of humanity and the history of humanity. Remember, and then don't be afraid to face the awfulness of who we can be and have been as white people, as people in general. Okay, if you want to take the white thing out of it, that makes you feel better. If you're, I don't want to feel guilty for being white. Okay, you know what you want to feel guilty about? Being a human being. Being a human being as a Christian, I have to feel some sense of, because of me, Christ died. Because of me, a man had to hang himself on a cross for 3 hours and die so that our sins could be forgiven. And that's a wild thing. We can get into that a whole nother time. But remember, because remembrance is where we celebrate what was and what has come and what will be. So by remembering that past, that gives us the fuel to understand today, and understanding today then gives you the hope and the determination to be better tomorrow. It's like, parenting or anything that's important in life. You have to recognize in a relationship, right? Men and women that are out there married, or men and men that are married, whatever. You have to, at points in a relationship, recognize the things that you did wrong in the past so that you can see how they've affected the present and then make commitments within the present to have the future be better. It's a continuum. You strip one of those things out and say, the past is past. Why do you have to keep going back to the past all the time? Why do you have to keep bringing that up? Well, because we haven't gotten past it yet. We haven't gotten past it yet. I do that all the time. My poor wife, after, almost 39 years of marriage, has to keep reminding me that we haven't gotten past this yet. This thing that, you still don't communicate when you need to communicate. When are you going to communicate? Don't you see? Yeah, I guess I did. Oh, why do you have to keep bringing that up? Because we haven't gotten past it yet. So it's really simple. So why do we have to have Black History Month? Why do we have to have any history? Because we haven't gotten past it yet. We haven't. So let's get
there
past
it.
Let's celebrate it. So.
Yes, and when we celebrate, again, we're celebrating the contributions. We're talking about the historic memory of the matter. Of course, we ain't just talking from the brutal realities of slavery to the relentless struggle of civil rights, man. It's just emphasizing the path that has to be taken, to overcome these things, the tremendous sacrifices that have been made, by these Black people for all humanity. Because again, in civil rights and voting rights, those things are all encompassing. It wasn't just for black people, like the 14th Amendment. That was not only for birthright citizenship, it was for all people that are naturalized. They had all rights available to them under the law. And, and of course, when we acknowledge all these different things, man, it just, we have to just take a step back and say, wow, look at all the contributions made. Look at, I can't remember it was a movie about the gentleman. He actually was a big part of helping with the first open heart surgery. I want to say John Haley or something like that. Okay. But anyway, it's just like it was a movie about it. Most Def played the guy. Oh. But I wish I could bring that. But it was like he was one of the first open heart surgeons, man. The guy was trying to create it, but he created a tool that made it work. And so it was just it's just celebrating those contributions to history that reshape American society. Those things that, again, they need to be celebrated. Of course, again, if you minimize the contribution, you can minimize and marginalize the history, and you change and control the narrative. And then you can say whatever you want in the year 2050, 2060, you can say whatever again. And even just simple as like right now, again, a lot of people may not even know this, but we're giving white South Africans amnesty and refugee status because they're saying they're being persecuted by Black South Africans, and tell me if that makes any sense to you. It does not, but that is the narrative that's being created. Because again, they want more white people coming into the country and less people of color coming into the country for we know the purposes and things like that of why they're doing it. But again, we just have to point out the history and the significance of all these different events and things in history, from the creation of the 14th Amendment to the Emancipation Proclamation, to the Civil Rights Act of 64, to the Civil Rights Act of 65, all these various things that have happened. And of course, we talk about all the affirmative action policies since the 1960s on. And it's always been about just trying to be equal, trying to be fair. It ain't about it's not about exaltation. It's not about pointing out this or that. Well, it is, because we got to point out the wrong in order to embrace to have the correct narrative. Yeah. But it ain't about guilt tripping. It's simply about saying, hey, this is how we got to this point. It just points out the systemic and systematic racism, discrimination, and all those things. And again, across the spectrum of the institutions in this country. Yeah. And again, but also celebrating Black History Month, man, it just kind of I'm just going to say it. It's a big focal point in the ongoing fight against white supremacy, man. Again, racism, it ain't just a matter of individual prejudice. It's about it's embedded in the very structures of our institutions. And, and again, when people can control the narrative, if they control the history, they can control the narrative. But, and again, that's why we have to press on with, activism and allyship, amplifying our voices. Like the voice of hate is crying out loud right now. The voice of love has to shout even louder, and of course, again, they want to erase things, they want to rewrite history. They want to downplay Black contribution. They want to suppress the narrative of resistance, and I'm trying to speak and not preach. But these things, these things are real. They're present. And again, calling things out is not to guilt anyone, but it's shining light in dark places. Amen. From James Baldwin, Frederick Douglass, James Baldwin, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Maya Angelou, just all these people that have made these historic contributions, not just to Black America, but America as a whole. And that's where
Goodness gracious.
Exactly. Humanity as a whole. And that's what we have to really, when it comes to Black history and remembering everything that encompasses the education, the cultural impact of Black people had on the world, like you just said, it's about preserving the right narrative of the country. And when we can really just let the word of God, or just let the truth be held up to our face like a mirror, and we can acknowledge that truth, the quicker we can get past this. But, again, it's just a matter of saying, hey, this was wrong. A person ain't got to say I was wrong. Just say, hey, yeah, that is wrong. What can I do to steer the ship now? You know what I mean?
Right. What part can I place in it?
Exactly. And when we can, then we'll start to reshape the nation and, and go forward.
And that's the way it is, folks. No, we've tried to take apart a pretty thick onion and just take a little bit of one layer off.
This is like a 100-part series right here, man.
Right, at least. So tune in, go get your sleeping bag, and we'll just keep talking it out. We've got other things to do, but we will come back to this. And I hope it just gets the conversation going. Think about it. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have a different point of view. It's okay to have a different frame of reference. Notice how I wove that in. That's the
look at you.
Yeah, right. I'm just doing
pop
the
locking.
Yeah, so I'm so special. Anyways, think about it. Just think about it. Remember, there's just so much power in the history, and if we fail to remember, if we fail to confront it, we are condemned to repeat it. And that condemnation means we're just going to be stuck in an endless loop. And if you've done any computer programming, you know that what happens when a program gets stuck in an endless loop, that program becomes absolutely useless. So break the loop. Okay.
And just one last thing for me, brother, if you don't mind. I'm strongly encouraging people to come out of their own news bubble to really see what is going on. Because, of course, if you're, like I say, I watch Fox News, I watch Newsmax, I see it all. So that way I know what I need to be praying for. Right, but it's the same time, it's like you see these talking points of people and it's like, wow, that's not true. And so it's just like, let's encourage people to come out of their news bubble. Because, again, we got the shining hand. Look at what I'm doing with this hand. With this hand is doing something really sinister. So come out of your news bubble, have an open mind, and embrace truth. And, because a fact can be swayed either way, but just get the fact and the truth.
Right. Well, and be sure that and it works on the other side too, right? If you're listening to CNN and MSNBC and,
absolutely
the things of that nature, the sources of that nature, listen to Fox News too. It doesn't have to be about just condemning the other as much as it's seeking to understand what's at root here. Why is, this is the way that this event was seen by this side of the equation, and this is the way that same event was seen by this side of the equation. It's like, yes. But the building is burning. We're seeing different sides of that building being burned down. At some point, we're going to have to say, guys, would you pick up a pail and would you guys go get a hose and let's take the burning down? Okay, can we do that? Because I see that you've got some really good hoses here, and I see you guys are particularly good with your buckets. Let's just work together and take this fire down, shall we? But we're not going to be able to do that if we say, you morons in your buckets, all you retards and your hoses. It's just, come on, really? Give me a break. Oh, and I used the word retard. I use it again. You're not supposed to use that word. I'm sorry, I grew up in the 60s. It was a word back then, and, I remember. Anyways, my name is Rauel Rush, and I'm part of one half of Frame of Reference Coming Together. This guy across the screen from me is another one, right? What's your name again, sir?
Antowan Hallman Sr.
Antowan Hallman. That's a really famous name, I think. I want to remember that name. So,
I pray that the Lord write that name, write that signature on this earth
in a book too. It would be nice if you got to a place and they actually define. I'm sorry, there is no table for you, Antoine. I'm sorry. Apparently your reservation was taken. So no. So, all right, man.
It's only one of him.
Yeah, you don't get to argue with that, Matt. I'm sorry. So, but anywho, thanks all for joining us. Hope that this gets the conversation going some more, because we need to be talking about this. Amen.
Amen. God bless.
See you, bro.